I survived 100 days in an ocean-only world. Now, this time around, things were pretty challenging because even the simplest of resources are very, very limited, and not to mention the unseen things that await me in the murky depths of this never-ending ocean. So, join me as we try to survive 100 days stranded deep inside of an infinite ocean. Also, if you do go on to enjoy this video at any point and you would be so kind, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing. It would be greatly appreciated, and it really does go a long way. But anyways, without any further ado, let's get into the video. So day 1, I spawned into this vast expanse of watering nothingness and immediately set out to find either food or wood, because I was going to need both pretty soon. When I ended up spotting this little ship off in the distance, so I began making my way over there, finding a crab leg and some random floating string in the process. Once I arrived, I spent about half my lifetime breaking this singular piece of wood to reveal a pirate illager spawner that I did try breaking as well, but managed to get about halfway before one spawned and blocked me. So instead I decided to use my time in a better way and gathered a bunch of wood whilst also taking a massive hit from one of these guys. Then I made my way up to the top deck, grabbed a bunch more logs and crafted a sword and pickaxe before breaking the spawner and then dealing with these scallywags in the most respectable way, by cowering far away from them up top in a place where I can hit them but they can't hit me back. But yeah, yar, that's just how it be out here in the salty depths. God, I'm never doing that again. Anyways, after dispatching them, I went to grab their loot that was actually pretty decent. These guys were heavily stacked for our first fight. Then I also went and grabbed the loot out the chest that had some stinky meat, bones, rum, and some illager silver bars. Once I grabbed all the loot, I began tearing the ship apart, grabbing more wood, and noticing another chest up in the top of the sails that contained 2 golden apples and some bones that I ended up throwing in the ocean, as well as a bunch of stinky meat that I almost died for. But definitely not bad for our first plunder. So I dove off the ship to grab the bones, but really couldn't see them, and then a whole bunch of drowns started making their way over to me. However, I did spot them just in time, went down and grabbed them, and then made my way back to the surface just before starting to drown. All that Subnautica I've been playing recently really came into clutch here. So I returned to the ship and devoured my crab leg along with some stinky meat, and then grabbed some wool from the sail to make a bed. After grabbing all of the stripped logs that the ship had to offer me, night had fallen. So I headed to bed, and on the morning of day 2, I woke up, ate some stinky meat, and spotted a strange structure in the water right next to my ship. So I began heading down there to investigate, but started getting chased by this here sea ghoul guy thing. I don't know what or who he is, but he creeped me the hell out and was really tanky. And after dealing with him, I headed back to the ship to regen and make some new tools, and then tried making my way down to the structure again, but realized just how deep it actually was, so one more trip back to the ship to make some doors, and now I can finally be one with the fishies. Oh, also, while I was down here, I also managed to grab a smoker and a furnace from these lovely scaly fellows, and on my way back to the ship, spotted some iron that I shall grab later. Once we arrived back at the ship, I began setting up a little mini base of operations when I realized that my inventory was full and I didn't pick up the furnace from earlier, so I went and grabbed that, and finally set up the crappy base on this lonely little ship, cooking up a few potatoes and crafting a boat, because tomorrow we go out venturing in search of more plunder, because I really don't think this area has too much to offer me anymore. So I grabbed a little bit more wood from the ship and headed to bed. On the morning of day 3, I placed down the boat and set out in search of another ship, or basically anything that contains loot. Now, I immediately ended up finding some more random floating items. This time it's a stick and 2 strings, so that's nice, I guess. After a while of sailing through the vast nothingness of the sea, I ended up spotting what looked to be like a tiny island off in the distance that had a small ship behind it and then a really big ship behind that one. So I headed over to it and began grabbing the wood. However, for some reason I can't do that apparently, so that kind of sucks. So I ended up grabbing a bunch of dirt and some seeds instead. Then made my way over to the ship that ended up being full of very angry shooty boys. So my giga massive brain told me to go through the bottom of the ship. So I did, and then broke 1 block too far and almost met my very swift demise that was only stopped by my boat. This boat came in so clutch, okay? I love this boat, okay? I'm giving him a title. His name is Monsieur Buoyant, okay? My noble steed. Boat savior aside, I did pop a gapple and then deal with a bunch of these awful boys moving further along the outside of the ship, looking for any sort of loot lurking within, and dealing with more of these guys, as well as breaking the spawner of them. Now, I did end up finding a chest, and it had some absolutely amazingly crappy loot inside of it. This is what I almost died for. This is my reward. Needless to say, I left the ship and headed over to the bigger, scarier one in hopes of better loot. But once I got closer to it and actually assessed the situation, I quickly left, because that place is way too stacked for a lowly salty sea boy such as me at the minute. So instead I took a trip to this other smaller one, but apparently it had a massive hole in it, so I decided to leave that one and ended up at this tiny raft with a spawner and a chest that did actually have some okay loot in it. And then I grabbed a bunch of wood from the raft and started making my way home, spotting a swampy looking hut on my way back. Once I got back to the wreckage that I call home, I stored all my loot away and headed to bed. Then, on the following couple days, I made myself an iron pickaxe and headed down into the salty depths once more to grab that iron from earlier. After successfully grabbing the iron, I decided to place down a door and start a water mine. Well, technically it's a water-free mine, but you get the idea. So I mined down for a while, finding a little bit more iron and making it all the way down to Y12 when I heard some running water. I began looking around for a potential cave, when I stumbled across this vein of coal right here that was absolutely massive, and eventually finding this very small, unsuspecting cave. So before going any deeper, I decided to stop off, make a bucket, and make a furnace to start smelting down my iron. Then began heading deeper into the cave that ended up opening up into a full-blown ravine. That was a very nice surprise considering that my luck recently hasn't been too great. So I headed back to my hidey hole to craft an iron sword and a shield, and then began making my way through the ravine, boofing a creeper and grabbing any and all ores that I could find. Once the ravine was well and truly cleared out of all the ores, I did a little bit of strip mining and found our first set of diamonds. It was a 5 vein, so definitely nothing to scoff at. Oh, and also I heard some lava, so I mined around and found it, however it didn't have anything interesting around it. So I went and grabbed all the ores that I'd left behind in the strip mine, then made a diamond pickaxe and returned back to the lava pool to grab some obsidian. And I'm not gonna lie, we're not doing too bad for day 5, alright? I mean, we did almost die like twice, but hey, you know, shiny gem pickaxe makes it all go away. Before leaving the lava pool, I cleared out some of my inventory, picked up my ferneye, and headed back to the ship to store my stuff away and head to bed. Day 6 started out with me making a dirt platform just off the side of the ship to use as a farm, because I may have diamonds, but I really don't have much food, and that's a problem. So I added a wall around it and began tilling the land and planting down my all of one seed, as well as a few carrots and potatoes, and then used my bones to break down into bone meal to grow mainly a bunch of potatoes, because let's be honest, they are the far superior food. At least in this point of the game, okay? I can't get golden carrots right now, okay? I'm a poor boy, okay? I'm a poor boy. Anyways, after dealing with the farm, I spent most of the day just clearing up the absolute mess that was previously a ship, so that way things can start feeling a little bit more homely. Now, by cleaning up, what I really mean is completely destroying and replacing everything with a floating slab that doesn't really look anything like a home yet, but hey, at least Monsieur Boyant has a place to stay now, and he's earned it. Then that evening, I watched the sun set over the salty seas and crafted myself a full set of iron armor and a designated chest for important items before heading to bed. Day 7, our first week survived. Not bad, but we've still got a very long way to go. Now, I ended up doing a little bit of research on the underwater scaly boys to see what they actually do, and it turns out that they're basically underwater villagers, but the trades didn't look too enticing. So I'm sure we'll do some training with those guys later, but for now, I built up a portal and headed into the Nether to see what awaited me this time, and was pretty pleasantly surprised to have a pretty nice spawn in a warped forest right next to me. So I grabbed a bunch of warped wood and then ended up spending a little while gathering quartz for some reason. I don't really know why I grabbed it, but whilst grabbing it, I did notice a fortress off in the distance, but we're not going over there yet, okay? I need to do a little bit more prep before we go there. So instead, I headed home and stored my nether loot away and set out in the direction of that hut thingy I saw earlier, because I really wanted to see what it was all about. Once I got close to the island, I noticed that there was a massive ship nearby, so we shall investigate that later. Once I made landfall on the island, I headed straight up into this hut thing, breaking a spawner and looting the chest that had a bunch of cooked fish and another gapple inside, and then also took some of this here palm wood and palm planks, even though they're not called palm planks. Instead, for some reason, they're called palm desks, because that just makes more sense, surely. After ruining and tearing up yet another island, I headed over to the Giga ship nearby to see if I could get any loot from this one or die trying. What the hell is that? No, I'm not dealing with that right now. Yeah, no, bye. Bye-bye. After getting chased by a bunch of bones on the back of a dolphin, I ended up stumbling across another what is essentially a sea village, so I looted it up, but I found out that this one had a library that had a Fortune 2 and Smite book, as well as a bunch of food and a fishing rod, and to top everything off, we ended this pillage by finding an enchanted golden apple and a couple of music discs. Now, this was not bad at all. So I headed back home to store my loot away and sorted out my storage a little before heading to bed after a very, very successful day. Once I woke up on day 8, I headed back down the mine and did some more strip mining, because I really need some more iron to make an anvil to actually put the fortune book on my pickaxe. However, shortly after starting mining, I heard some zombies, so I had a little look around for them and ended up falling into a cave and then straight into some lava trying to escape them. The absolutely genius escape plan there, Poppers. Absolutely genius. Contrary to what should actually happen when you fall into lava, or essentially, in my case, jump into it yourself willingly, I didn't die and instead ended up cowering in a corner and dealing with most of the mobs that are gathered in the cave that way, because I just deep fried myself, okay? I need a little minute to recover. Once all the mobs got dealt with, I headed back out and began looking for whatever I could find in these caves, grabbing any ores I came across as well as 3 creepers back to back to back. But other than that, I kinda just explored the caves, grabbing ores and dealing with any mobs that stood in the way, as well as finding this really cool glow squid hangout. But after chilling with them for a little while, I heard some zombies that led me to this absolutely hellish cave, where I almost died a couple of times and also had to traumatically put down a slime. I'm so sorry, but I don't want to do this. But hey, I found 6 shiny blue gems, so I was happy and the trauma was gone now. But let me tell you, I cannot stress to you enough how awful this cave was, okay? The mobs just kept spawning and I just kept getting beat up over and over and over again, and I eventually slowly managed to make my way through, lighting things up to try and prevent this literal army of mobs from respawning. Also, a creeper went sicko mode and absolutely decimated a group of mobs. I guess he was having a bad day or something. Now, after getting more than enough iron, I returned back to base and smelted it down, made our anvil and added fortune to my pick before heading back down the mine and mining out any ores that I walked by or left until I had fortune. Once I grabbed enough, I headed home, started things smelting and headed to bed. And on the morning of day 11, I crafted myself an enchantment table along with a bunch of bookshelves. However, I stored it away for now until we expand out the island some more. After that, I did a little bit of farming while cooking up some more potatoes and crafting a diamond shovel before heading back over to the island from earlier and grabbing a bunch more dirt from it when I stumbled across this chest in the center of the island that had an enchanted sword and some pork chops in it, as well as another gapple. Gee, these things are just insanely common in this apparently, but I'm not going to complain. So I grabbed the rest of the dirt and headed back home and began work on outlining our first couple of parts that would soon become our base. Now, I was going to go for a smaller base this time, and, well, I do start out with a smaller one, but it doesn't last that long, okay? I wanted to see what I could do with less space, but it didn't last very long, okay? It got bigger. Now, after successfully finishing off our first outline, I lit up the area around it and tried to go to bed, but couldn't because there was a whole bunch of drowns and endermen, so I had to go and deal with them, and almost threw everything away walking into this very angry boy, but luckily I got out there alive, dealt with the last drown, and headed to bed. On day 12, I organised and sorted out some of my storage, as well as crafting a diamond sword, because if I've learned one thing from this world so far, is that nothing wants to give me a break, and everything just wants to attack me. And then I made my way over to yet another small ship over by the Hut Island, and once I arrived, I began the attack in the same way as usual. However, these rapscallions had something else in mind. Yep, they literally just blew a hole in their ship, scaring the absolute living daylights out of me. But I kind of guess they saved me a job, so I'm not going to complain. Also, the loot in the chests was okay, you know, there's just a totem of undying in there. Yeah? Hoo, these land-loving scallywags don't stand a chance against me now. That's it, I'm literally never going to die. I'm never going to die. And I guess the remaining loot on the ship was pretty good, but nowhere near as good as the totem. So, after successfully conquering yet another tiny little ship, I headed back home and sorted through my loot, and also made a small little temporary island thingy off the side of the base, and built up a little crappy enchantment area there. Because we're really going to need to gear up a lot more to start conquering everything that lurks within these seas. However, I do need better than level 22 enchants, so maybe leave the sea conquering for later, and for now, let's just head to bed. Day 13, I headed out straight in one direction to see if I could find another sea village that had a library, because obviously I need more books, and that seemed like the most logical way to get them, because I mean, where else am I supposed to, where am I going to find a cow, where am I going to find sugarcane, okay? It's going to be floating, is it? It's going to be floating? No, so sea village makes most sense. Now, I literally didn't really have to move at all, because there was another one right next to the base that I completely missed. So I headed down and grabbed the bookshelves, as well as finding some glowberries and an absolutely huge find of a Silk Touch book. Now, the next island we find, we can actually go and grab some grass from and bring it back home. And there was also this house ruin thing filled with a ton of barrels with some pretty okay stuff in them. But after finding them, I made the very small journey back home and made the final bookshelves necessary to get level 30 enchants. Now, also something really weird, I've almost died multiple times already in this video, but I seem to be progressing much faster than any other time. I don't know, it's very hard, but very easy at the same time. It's a fun challenge, you should definitely try it. Anyways, after dealing with the bookshelf problem, I removed the inner circle of the outline because it was just too small, and instead I was going to use the outer circle as the new inner circle. And by the time I was finished with that, the sun was setting, so I quickly dispatched some drowns and headed to bed. Then on day 14, I spent the day fishing, because I mean I have all this ocean to myself, I may as well do some fishing in this video. Now, I was actually looking for a mending book, so I just fished all day, finding a lockbox with some glowstone inside, as well as a Lure 2 fishing rod that I was actually going to combine with my Unbreaking 3 one, but it was way too expensive. So, after fishing for most of the day, I ended up finding this message in a bottle that once opened told me some actually insanely useful information, so be sure to remember this for later. It's really going to come in handy and tie everything together. It's very, very important. Anyways, I spent the rest of the evening just fishing away, but not really finding much, so here's the day's plunder. I don't think it's too bad, but it would have been way more efficient with a better fishing rod. So I'll probably end up doing more later, but for now, it's bedtime. On the following morning, I crafted myself a gold helmet before heading into the Nether and gathering a bunch of quartz for XP, because it's enchanting time soon. Now, after spending a while grabbing quartz, I returned home and smelted down all my gold, then returned back into the Nether to do some piglin trading, mainly in search of ender pearls. But after trading literally all night with this guy, I ended up getting absolutely nothing. However, that fire res potion will help me with the fortress, so at least we got something out of this. Now, by the time I returned home, the sun was rising on day 16, so I stuffed everything in a chest and enchanted our first item at the table. It was my sword, and I got some pretty awful enchants. So I retried it and got absolutely trash again. After doing a little bit of smelting to regain some XP, I was ready for the third attempt, and well, it didn't come out great, but hey, at least we got loot in 3, and that's not too bad. And because I ended up getting a pretty nice roll on my sword, I decided to grab some cobble and head back into the Nether to begin making my way over to the fortress, because I'll probably only have to boost like 3 blazes to get all of the rods. Once I arrived at the fortress, I towered my way up, broke my way in, and was greeted by Witherskelly, who I dealt with, and then popped my fire res potion and went on a blaze hunting spree. Only having to kill 3, actually. I was precisely correct. I only had to kill 3 to get the rods. So as quickly as I made my way there, I was straight back out and back home, and I'm not going to lie, that is probably the fastest time it's taken me to get blaze rods. I've never been that lucky. So I just dropped the rods in a chest and headed to bed. Alrighty, day 17. I headed out in search of some sponge, and now you may say, hey Poppers, don't you hate ocean monuments? Aren't they the literal bane of your existence? Why would you take them on without any equipment? Any milk? Any like invis potions or anything like that? Well, my dear friend, you are incorrect. I am not taking on an ocean monument. Instead, I shall invade a bunch of ships / islands / villages in search of sponge, because I'm sure somewhere, someone will have it. It seems like a very piratey material. So I sailed and sailed until I found a ship, using my trusty palm desk to board it and clearing out the inhabitants, finding a zombie villager, but he went bye-bye because I really don't have time for that right now. Wow, that's a lot of pearls and some pistol ammo with a pistol. I'm sure this will go completely fine. Yeah, did that scare you? Because that sure as hell scared me. That literally blew my ears out. I understand that it's supposed to be a little bit loud, but I mean, I could do with my eardrums not being ruptured every time I shoot this bloody thing. Oh, look, it's another ship. Oh, Jesus Christ, calm down. My God, please stop. It's so loud. Oh, look at that, some pirate bombs. I'll pocket them for later. After leaving the very loud ship, I stumbled across another tiny raft, getting a gapple and some normal apples for my trouble. Then immediately found another island and a ship. So I went and looted the hidden chest on the island and headed over to the ship to test out my new toys, but almost blew myself to a million pieces, so I'm not really going to be using them anytime soon. No thank you, no thank you. Now, needless to say, this ship heist didn't go off as planned and was pretty much a failure, considering I released all of these angry, cold, wet pirates into the ocean, and now they're really, really angry. So I tried entering the other way, but quickly got blasted off, so I just decided to leave and headed towards another smaller ship, when this guy spawned, and just point blank shot me, so that was nice. But I dealt with him, looted up the ship, and crafted some more ammo before heading to bed and continuing out on our crusade in the morning. Looting another ship and finding a bunch more ammo. And I know, I get it, I'm only targeting the smaller ships at the minute, but don't worry, okay? I will run these salty seas by the end of this 100 days, okay? You just need to know your place, and out here in the cursed waves, there will always be a bigger fish. God, I don't know how many pirate things I've already said in this video, and it's not even halfway done. Now, we did end up moving up and tackling a slightly bigger ship, and this time actually clearing out everyone, and, well, it was pretty easy, considering that the shooty guys don't move, and, well, the loot was pretty good. I got 3 pieces of enchanted iron armor, so it was definitely worth my time coming onto the ship. One more tiny ship later, and I found a diamond, so that wasn't too bad, but then I remembered what I actually came out here to find, and decided to stop decimating every reasonably sized vessel that I came across, and instead sailed around under the cover of darkness to see if there were any more villager things under the water in hopes of one of them having some sponge. Now, I found 2 almost immediately, but neither of them had any sponge, so the search continued into the night where I spotted some smoke off in the distance that ended up being a little island with some pretty mid loot. So I just hopped back on my boat and left. Now, I ended up looting an absolute bunch of these sea village things throughout the night because they were super easy to find in darkness because they literally glow. And I also came across this guy who was pretty annoying to deal with, but once I dealt with him, I went into his home and he had absolutely no loot. But finally, after having no luck for almost 3 days, I opened a chest to find 3 sponge. Thank God. So I began making my way back home, arriving by nightfall, storing all my items away, and heading to bed. Alrighty, day 21. Now, you might be wondering, hey Poppers, why do you need sponge? And, well, I wanted to clear out the entire center of my base of all water and then have like flowers and grass and stuff in there instead because I think it'll look really cool. But I thought it'd make the entire process so much easier with sponge. So I headed into the Nether to quickly dry it off and then made my way back down the mine to grab a bunch more cobble, broke it down into slabs and began work on more outlines for the base. Mainly just to make them a little bit bigger. Now, by the time the new outlines were done, it was dark, so I headed to bed, and on the morning of day 22, I began moving all my items out from the center of the circle to an outer part, because I'm going to need the middle completely clear to actually clear out of water. Now, after sorting everything out, I spent the rest of the day fishing. It was a pretty boring, pretty uneventful day. Day 23 started out as a pretty miserable rainy day, so I enchanted my shovel and headed over to a nearby coral reef to grab as much sand as possible, because it was going to help me clear out the water just a little bit faster. After digging up sand for most of the day, I began placing it all down all the way around the center circle, to cut it off from the rest of the ocean. Then I just rinsed and repeated this process of grabbing sand and placing it down all the way around the circle until it was done. But I did also realize that the sand is multi-purpose, okay? Because whatever sand I use here, I can then pick up and smelt down into the glass, which will eventually line this full place. But now, eventually, after days of tedious work of placing down sand, the circle was done. So I headed to bed, and on day 26, I made my way back down into the caves in search of some more diamonds, because I wanted to take a break from anything to do with building. And of course, as soon as I got back down into the caves, it was still as hellish as ever. I mean, just look at this. It's literally insane. This place is basically a mob farm for skellies, zombies, and don't even get me started on how many creepers spawn down here. It is ridiculous. But after a while of running through mob-infested caves and not finding really anything, I decided to focus my efforts onto strip mining for diamonds instead, because I'm sick of stopping every 2 seconds to fend off a literal army of mobs. And this ended up being a very lucrative decision, because I found a few veins of diamonds pretty quickly, getting a decent amount from them. So I returned to the surface, crafted a full set of diamond armor, and headed to bed. On day 27, I awoke, grabbing my golden helmet and hopped back into the Nether to grab a bunch of blackstone, because I think I want to use that to outline the top of the base. So after almost 2 iron picks later, I think we had enough for now, so I returned home and spent the rest of the day replacing some of the cobble with blackstone bricks, and also made a floor under the water at the level that I want the center to actually go down to. On the morning of day 28, I headed back over to the hut island and grabbed all of the grass blocks from it to use in the center of the base. Once I returned back home, I got to work on draining the center of the circle. Now, initially I did use sponges, but I realized very quickly that they were extremely inefficient and taking way too long. So instead I opted for not using them and instead going the sand route because it is much faster. But oh my god, was this extremely tedious and boring. Now, after 3 days straight of placing and breaking sand, the center was finally empty and ready to be built in. But oh my days, do I hate draining water. It is so tedious. So on day 32, I got to work on placing down all the grass and dirt in the middle, but we didn't have enough to fill it out, but that'll do for now. So I made a bunch of furnaces and began smelting down as much sand as possible to make into glass. Then whilst they were doing their thing, I headed down to the sea village and traded some lapis with these scaly boys, getting some Prismarine loot boxes in return. And decided to just trade half a stack with them, getting a bunch of loot boxes and open them all to get some pretty cool sea stuff as well as some bottles of enchanting. So that was definitely not bad. After finishing up the trading with the oversized fish, I went to the Nether and gathered a bunch of warped stems, because wood was running low and I really want to make a mob farm so that we can actually max out our gear pretty quickly, and for that I was going to need quite a lot of trapdoors. Oh, and also whilst I was in here I boofed an enderman and got 4 pearls to drop from him. That was actually insane and I didn't know that you could get that many. Anyways, after chopping down things in the Nether, I headed home and spent the night down the mine, grabbing as much cobble as I could get my hands on to build the mob farm tomorrow. Okay, day 33, it's mob farming time. So I spent the day working on building up this absolutely eyesore of a farm and had it finished by nightfall, and then proceeded to spend the night farming out mobs for XP. Then, as the sun was rising on day 34, I had amassed enough XP to enchant 2 pieces of armor. So I rebuilt the enchantment area and enchanted my chestplate and boots, getting depth strider on them, which was actually pretty good considering, you know, water. After enchanting, I began digging up all the sand around the center circle and replaced it with glass that wasn't tedious, repetitive, or annoying at all. But that's alright, because on the morning of day 35, it was all replaced and looking pretty nice. However, my shovel had seen better days. After finishing the center, well, somewhat, we still need the dirt, I decided to grind out the mob farm for the rest of the day to stack up on XP. Now, I did find a zombie villager that I wanted to capture and cure, and I set up a trap with Monsieur Boyant, but accidentally hit it, and, well, needless to say, we didn't get the villager. You'll have your moment soon, my boaty friend, don't you worry. After farming out some more, that evening I used the XP to enchant a fishing rod and combined the other that I had together, bankrupting myself, and then spent the rest of the day fishing. Yet again in search of a mending book, and also I took a few swings at the mob farm occasionally to stack up on a little bit more XP. After fishing for a while, I found a Neptune's Bounty with a Neptunium hoe in it that had some pretty cool abilities, so that's nice. But didn't end up finding a mending book even after fishing all the way through the night. You win some, you lose some. So on day 36, I headed out in search of another island to grab the last bit of dirt from. However, pretty shortly after setting off out, I spotted an iceberg and a tiny little ship, so I headed over to loot it and got some pretty crappy stuff. So I just continued on searching, finding an island pretty shortly after, digging up all the dirt and looting another crappy chest. After the island was no more, I made my way to a nearby small ship, looted that for some pretty mid loot, and then looted an island behind it for some absolutely terrible loot. I don't know what happened over this side of the ocean. There's just no loot. Everything's poor over here. I don't like it. So I headed home and placed down the rest of the dirt, and now we're only waiting on the grass to spread. And whilst waiting for that, I spent the night doing my new favourite pastime, XP farming. Woo! Day 37, I enchanted the last 2 pieces of armor, getting some pretty nice rolls, and then took my remaining lapis down to the sea village and traded for some more loot boxes, because small brain like Minecraft gambling. After trading all my lapis, I realized that I actually wanted to use the Prismarine for the outline of the base instead of the blackstone, and thought that lapis trading could be a pretty decent way of getting it. So I cleared out my inventory and headed out to sea to start a new mine. But instead, I ended up getting distracted by the structures that I found that had some pretty decked out drowns in them. So I slowly started taking one on, finding a buried treasure map and getting some really crappy loot from floor 1, and also floor 2, and also floor 3. You know what? I'm done with you, okay? Get better loot, I'm not interested. Now, I eventually did start a new mine and went in search of lapis, and did end up finding quite a nice amount. However, decided to leave pretty soon after, because I realized that this probably isn't the fastest way to get Prismarine. But on the following days, I took all of my lapis down to the sea village and traded it all to see how much Prismarine I could get from the loot boxes. Once it was all gone, I opened up the loot boxes, and I do think this is a pretty quick, safe way to get it. Plus, you know, I want another pick and I only have 1 diamond, so I may as well go mine for some lapis. And that's exactly what I did. I headed back down the mine and stayed down there for around 2 days, going back through the mob-infested caves and dealing with the ever-increasingly annoying guys down there, and mining up any lapis I found along the way, as well as stumbling across an amethyst geode. But after a while of being down here, I took my lapis back to the surface and did some more trading that was pretty tedious because these guys trade very, very slow. However, I did end up with a bunch more loot boxes and opened them all up to get a whole bunch of Prismarine. Also, if you're wondering why it's opening super fast, it's not an auto clicker. I just rebound my right click key on my mouse to a key on the keyboard, and it just makes them open so much faster and just speeds up this entire process so much. Now, we did end up getting a pretty nice amount of Prismarine, especially if we break it all down into slabs, we get a pretty decent amount. And it should be enough to make some pretty good progress on the outline, I think. So on day 42, I put that to the test and began going around making another outline, once again having to make it bigger because it was just too small. I told you the small base wouldn't last, so much for that idea this time around. Also, I think that the colour scheme I'm going to go for the inner part of the outer circle, and probably the entire build, is going to be smooth quartz, and quartz bricks, because they mix really well with Prismarine and they look really good together. And now I'm going to be completely honest with you, we had nowhere near enough Prismarine. So I just decided to say screw it and enchanted an iron pick with efficiency 4 and headed down into the ocean to grab it from wherever I could find it. Because I'll be damned if I have to go back to them mines. Now, I mined up all of the villages that I could find, taking whatever little prismarine bricks that they had, and also finding some lapis along the way in some of the buildings. Also, I swear to God, if someone comments that there's a super fast and easy way of getting prismarine without a guardian farm or whatever, thank you, I really appreciate it, but it's a little bit late. But you're awesome. Thank you. Keep telling me how to make my life easier. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. Now, after spending the night out in the ocean grabbing as much prismarine as I could possibly get my hands on the morning of day 43, between the stuff that we'd mined and the stuff that we got from loot boxes, we were pretty stacked. So I continued work on the outline, and well, I'm not gonna lie, this circle was so annoying to build for some reason. I don't know why. I kept messing up the corners and just putting things in the wrong places, and it just didn't line up. It was really annoying to build, and it ended up just taking longer than I expected because I just had to basically rebuild the entire thing, so bye-bye day 44, I guess. However, once finished, I replaced all the blackstone in the middle with prismarine bricks, removed the disgusting cobble circle because, like I said earlier, it was just too small. But once that was done, things were looking a lot better, so I headed to bed, and on day 45, I thought that it was time to start making our eyes for the Ender Dragon and head out in search of the Stronghold. So that's exactly what I did, throwing our first eye and having it break straight off the bat. Absolutely great. Now, I'm not actually going to go straight to the dragon fight, but I may as well explore the Stronghold to see what loot it has down there. Also, on my journey, I found a small ship that I cleared out and got another totem, so that's very nice. It's really rare to ever see me carrying one of these things, never mind two. Shortly after leaving the ship, we had arrived where the eye told us to go. So I made my way down to the Stronghold, almost immediately finding the portal and just having enough ice to light it. Now, it's looting time. Finding 2 diamonds straight off the bat, as well as a room filled with zombies. There was literally like a whole family in there, and well, you can't kill one without killing them all. I also found a small library with 1 enchanted book, and a big library with a whole bunch of them. But after finding the libraries, the Stronghold was pretty dead, so I headed back home and spotted this fossilized skeleton of a giant fish, and just had to check it out. It's a good thing I did as well, because there was a chest that was, I guess, pretty cool. The loot wasn't great, but it looked cool. Once I arrived back home, I sorted through all my loot and tried getting a good efficiency enchant on my new pick, but ended up getting everything but. So instead, I just swung at the mob farm all night until the morning, when I tried again and still no luck. So I just decided to put the efficiency 3 book on there and call it a day. After dealing with the pick, I grabbed a bunch of bones and some moss and then started sprucing up the center of the area to, actually have it look somewhat nice. Also, I actually grabbed my first wood from like a real tree, considering I haven't seen one of them yet. Now, I really do like the idea of having like a natural center surrounded by the ocean. It looks really cool, but there's still a lot of work to do on that, and for the entire base for that matter, but that's okay, because now it's time to spend an insane amount of time grabbing quartz. And after 2 days of grabbing a bunch of this really annoying material, I smelted a bunch down and crafted some into bricks, and on day 49 began work on filling in the outer circle. Now, I did make some progress, but realized that this was going to need quite a bit more quartz than what I had. But hey, it was pretty good progress, and I really like how it's coming out. Oh, also a wandering trader spawned, but had nothing good. Now, once I ran out of quartz, I headed to bed, and on day 50, grabbed the sea lanterns that we got from the loot boxes and went around placing them all the way around the exterior of the circle to really make it pop out at night. But we ended up not having enough to finish the whole thing, however we were pretty close. So I just spent the rest of the day moving all the storage and work areas down into the center of the circle to clear up the outer ring. Now on day 51, everything was moved and all that was left to do to clear up the outer ring was to remove the mob farm, and well, we'll do that later. For now, I headed back to the fortress and went in search of some nether wart so that we can actually start cooking up some potions soon to help with boofing the dragon. In my search, I found a couple of mediocre chests before actually finding it. After securing all the nether wart that I was going to need, I headed back home and made a brewing stand along with a bunch of awkward potions and then started cooking them up into their respected needed potions for the fight, except slow falling, because I don't actually have the phantom membranes just yet. So whilst waiting up at night, I actually went and grabbed some more quartz and did this through day 52 as well, just to kill time. But on the night of day 52, there was still no phantoms, so it was back to quartz mining, and eventually did run into phantoms on the night of day 53. In the morning, I placed down all the quartz I got from the previous day spent mining, making some pretty good progress, all things considered. It's literally just because quartz is really, annoying to gather, especially without villagers. It's super annoying, but I'd say it's definitely worth it. After running out of quartz, I went around adding some prismarine path outlines on each side of the circle, before gearing up and enchanting a bow, and then making our way back to the Stronghold, because it's time for the dragon to go bye-bye. Arriving at the Stronghold by sunrise, heading down, popping my potions, and heading in. Now, this time around, I managed to hit the towers pretty easily and accurately. However, the problem was the dragon. I couldn't hit it for some reason without a bow. I don't know why, but it's really weird, and I also tried reloading everything, and nothing fixed it, so I guess it was bugged or something? I really don't know what happened this fight. So, after a while of impaling the beast with arrows, I boofed it real good, and then got messed up by an enderman before grabbing the XP and the egg, and heading into the outer islands in search of the elytra. When I immediately spotted these flying things that seemed pretty chill, as well as our first city, but obviously it didn't have a ship. So I headed in, dealt with the shulkers and got myself a little bit of loot before continuing on, and about 2 minutes later stumbled across another city, but this time it had a ship. So I headed up, dealt with the shulkers, grabbed the loot, and finally grabbed the elytra. Also, for some reason I didn't actually loot the city. I think I forgot to, but either way I made my way back to the mainland and finally back home in record time. That was really quick for me. It usually takes about 9 years in there trying to find the elytra. So I sorted through all my loot, added silk touch on one of my pickaxes that I looted, and headed to bed. Day 58, it's more lapis searching time because I need some more sea lanterns. So I headed out to sea one more time in the complete opposite direction from last time, but realised that Monsieur Bayant was left over at the Stronghold. Can we get an F in the comments for the best companion for a lonely man in the middle of the ocean? You will be missed, buddy. I'll never forget you. So I headed out in my search for lapis and decided to just go through and take it from the villagers because I think that this is probably the fastest way of grabbing it because the villagers are almost guaranteed to have a house with it. Now, whilst I was out stealing lapis, I also grabbed a bunch of coral because I do plan on making a coral reef around my center hub because I think it'll look really cool hidden away behind the glass. Anyways, after yoinking lapis all night, on the morning of day 59, I pulled over to the nearest sea village and spent a while trading up all the stacks I got for those sweet loot boxes. Once acquired, I headed back home, getting stung by a jellyfish on the way, but that's okay because loot. Oh, the serotonin hit from opening these things. God, it's just so exciting to try and get sea lanterns. Now, I did end up with more than enough to finish off placing the lanterns, and then it was time to begin work on the coral reef before it gets a little bit too far in this video. So I went and grabbed every single block that I could craft down into a slab and began work on putting a floor all the way down underneath to where the coral reef is going to sit. And yeah, it will look terrible for a little bit, but it's going to be covered with sand anyway, so you won't even know it's there, okay? You won't know that part of it's wood and part of it's netherrack and part of it's cobblestone, okay? It'll just look like sand. Now, I really quickly realized that netherrack was going to be a big savior for this part of the build just because of how readily available it is and how quick it is to mine. It mixes so well with our very limited amount of time. Now, eventually, after tearing through netherrack and replacing it for a while, we were finally done with the first layer, and it actually didn't take too long, partly down to how fast it is to gather netherrack, and partly down to depth strider and respiration, letting me move faster and breathe longer down there. Also, I did do a little bit of trading to grab a couple more sea lanterns that I could place down around the middle, but once that and the netherrack was done, I grabbed a bunch more sand, as well as destroyed almost an entire coral reef, before placing the sand down all the way around the sides and all the way across the bottom to block everything in. Then used the quartz that I found whilst gathering netherrack to finish off the outer ring, and now it's finally time to do the fun and interesting part that I've actually been looking forward to for quite a while. Now it's time to add the coral. That was actually pretty fun. It was quite satisfying just throwing it down and hoping for the best and just throwing some weird shapes down there, and well, after a quick shader change later, things were done and I'm very happy with the reef. Now, I've never built one of these things before, so I am actually quite impressed with how it came out. Now, I changed the shaders from complementary reimagined to just do complementary shaders because I've got more like graphical things I can do with the water and make it look clearer, so we're sticking with these ones from now on. Anyways, now that all that's built, all that's left is to build a little house thingy for myself and add some stone arches or something around the outer circle and maybe even a big circle above the center, but I don't think we're going to have time for that in this video. Now, on day 69, I spent a little bit of time thinking about how I wanted my home to look as well as exactly what I wanted to build it out of, but we're not doing anything with that right now because it's time for us to drop some really good enchants on a bow and my sword and then hopefully take on a big ship. Now, I did try re-enchanting my sword a few times until I settled for an okay set of enchants and then headed out in search of a ship to board and conquer. After stumbling across and looting a couple of smaller ones, not getting much other than a couple more gapples, I ended up stumbling across another mid-sized ship that I went through and looted as well as blowing part of it up with some TNT. And also, these ships are like the easiest ones to loot because, I mean, the guys don't even move and they don't really do much damage. So I really do think that we can take on the big ones now. Oh yeah, and this ship had some pretty good loot, mainly being diamonds. But then, off in the distance was a pretty big ship. Not the biggest, but bigger than any I'd taken on before. So I set up a way to boof these guys and their captain somewhat safely. and after beating on this guy for like 2 minutes straight, he finally went down, and I began trying to take out all the spawners, and almost ended up popping a totem to this ninja creeper that just dropped down right next to me. So that was a very nice surprise. But just as things were starting to ease out and get a little bit easier, this guy drops down and starts hailing me with bullets, tearing through my health. Now, I did manage not to die and instead dealt with him, but then it happened again and I barely escaped with half a heart. So maybe I'm not ready to deal with these ships yet, I don't know. Now, the logical thing to do here would be to go home and call it a day, but we're not doing that, because I'm not going to be defeated by another one of these ships. So I went through dealing with every one of these rapscallion, land-living, salty bottle scallywags, I took over the ship, but in all seriousness, the ship had absolutely terrible loot. It was not worth it. It was just a bad decision overall. So I decided to make the good decision and just headed back home. Once I got back, I made a bunch of TNT from the leftover gunpowder from the mob farm, and then headed into the Nether, dug down to a lower Y level, and began blowing up everything in search of some Netherite that I actually found whilst digging out an area to place the TNT. Then, after blowing it all up, I found 2 more veins and a little bit more, but that's where my luck ended, because I found absolutely nothing after that. But hey, I'll take the 10 that I already got. So I returned home to smelt it all down, crafting a Netherite pick and a chest plate. Alrighty, day 71. I set a bunch of cobblestone off smelting and then said bye bye to the eyesore of a mob farm because I no longer need the XP, so I just spent the day tearing it down. Then on day 72, I connected the outer circle to the inner circle with bridges and then went around adding a bunch of sea lanterns I had left over all the way around the center of the bridges, before then heading back into the Nether and to the fortress to start farming out wither skellies, because I think 4 beacons will really make this build pop. Also, this fortress was spawning these guys hella quick, and with loot in 3, I managed to get the skulls pretty efficiently before heading back home, grabbing some soul sand and heading to the end to kill my 2 withers. And oh god, was this a very hard fight, you know, they really made me work for these stars. Once they were dealt with, I returned home and made the beacons, and on day 73, started going back around the ocean, gathering up all the iron that I could find in villages and ships, because this is a really quick way of stacking up on it. Now, I did end up finding a pretty OP ship with some iron blocks, 2 gapples, and 1 OP gapple, but realized I didn't actually need an insane amount of iron just to build a few beacons. So I headed back, placed down my 2 beacons, and then spotted some seagulls just chilling at my house. And then spent the rest of the day marking out the area in which I actually want to build my house in. And then over the coming days, I spent a ton of time gathering resources and building blocks that I was going to need to actually build the thing. After gathering everything I was going to need, I began work on building up the house. Now, I've never really done a house out of Prismarine before, or built really many things out of it, so there were quite a few failed trial and error tests in a test build world, until I eventually decided on the design that I've got right now. Now, you can't really see it too well, because, you know, it's a little bit of a close fit down there, but after a while of building the house, I think it came out looking pretty nice. So I added some leaves, walls, and flowers around the outside, and boom, here it is. The Ocean Hub, and I think it came out looking really nice, especially for like my first true Prismarine build. I hope you guys like this one. It's very clean and I am very, very happy with it. Okay, day 80. After finally finishing off the build of our house, I grabbed some buckets and decided to go out in search of a pet or 2 to actually name after you guys, because this has been quite a lonely time out here in the middle of the ocean. Because I haven't really had any friends along the way, and well, there was Monsieur Bayant, but he got lost in the salty depths and was also inanimate. Anyways, I went in search of probably the only type of friend I can get in this world, a fish. Now, I found a blobfish straight off the bat, but I'm not going to put someone's name on a blobfish, it just seems insulting. So I grabbed a couple of jellyfish and some tropical fish before getting stung by a jellyfish while trying to steal it, as well as grabbing a nautilus. And then headed out in search of some more kind of exquisite fish, like this here flying fish. He's pretty cool, but not as cool as these 2 lobsters that I managed to stumble across and pick up. Once I took everything back home, that night I made all the name tags and named all the fish on screen now, and here are all the people who got fishies named after you and what fish they got. Now, I do plan on doing these sooner in the videos so that you guys can be around a lot more, but it's just kind of hard in this one considering, you know, everything's ocean. But either way, if you guys want to be a dog, a frog, or any other animal or mob, then be sure to let me know by dropping a comment down below, and hey, who knows, maybe you'll be in the next video. On day 81, I actually made my way back down the mine in search of some more diamonds, because I needed to repair my armor and actually make myself some new boots, considering that I'm wearing iron right now and have been for the past few days. So I began looking around caves and strip mining in search of some, as well as picking up a bunch of iron along the way, because I do still need it to make a load of blocks for the amount of beacons that I actually want. After mining for about a day or so down here, I actually ended up finding a pretty hefty amount of diamonds as well as a pretty nice amount of iron and lapis too. So I made my way back up top, began smelting down my iron and headed to bed. Now on day 83 I crafted a fresh set of diamond armor excluding a chest plate and then enchanted them, combining my old armor with the new to make even more OP armor. After that, I traded with this lovely fellow right here to get myself some spruce and oak saplings. Why, you may ask? Well, I don't really know, I was just happy to see them, I guess. But anyways, once again, I headed out to sea to finally take on the big ship that's been eluding me this entire time. After sailing around for a little while, the ship was finally in sight, and this time, it was going down. So I made my way in, dispatching all the landlubbers inside before looting a chest with some diamonds that I didn't really need, but I'll take them. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this ship was extremely easy and the loot was really not good. It was a real disappointment. So instead I decided to go and take on the Drowned dungeon that I found earlier, and Jesus, this Drowned Lord guy was insanely tanky. He just would not die. I was literally here hitting him again and again and again for 5 minutes straight and got absolutely nowhere. So I pulled a big brain strat and basically emptied out the water around him, made a flint and steel and had that do the work for me. That way I didn't take any more damage from hitting him because I think he actually had thorns on his armor. But clearly I didn't think this through enough because I burnt all the wood around him, allowing him to escape. But did manage to trap him back in there and set him back on fire. However, when he actually died, all of his loot went straight into the fire right underneath him. Yep, I know, I'm an absolute idiot and this was a complete waste of time. However, I did begin making my way further and further through the dungeon, finding these very drippy boys and carefully making my way through, picking up the chests and taking some pretty nasty hits in the process. Now, eventually I did get to the chests and looted them, but there was nothing down here. There was literally not a single item in these chests. I was stunned. I was absolutely stunned. So I just returned home and headed to bed. And on day 85, I did some more lapis trading for some more loot boxes because indeed my gambling addiction has progressed. Then after grabbing the sacred loot boxes, I returned to the Nether, grabbing a bunch more quartz and then digging out the connectors from around the outer circle to instead replace them with stairs because getting up and down from the center base is really not good and it's way too slow and I can make it look so much better. So I did, and it surprisingly didn't take too long and was pretty easy to do, especially with how good it came out looking. Now I'm really happy with it, and also during the build I spotted this crab just chilling on the roof of my house, so I thought I'd share that with you. But yeah, the stairs came out good, very nice, and much easier to get up and down now. Alrighty, day 90. It's Nether time again to grab the last of the Wither Skelly skulls for the last 3 beacons. That ended up going even smoother than last time because for some reason this fortress literally just throws these guys at you. And especially with this sword, they didn't even stand a chance, and the skulls did drop somewhat frequently. So after gathering the remaining skulls, I headed back to the end and had some more brutally hard fights with these withers before making and placing down all my beacons around the base, and this is how far things have come. I think it looks pretty nice. On the morning of day 94, I made some changes inside of the house to actually tidy things up a bit and give the enchantment table its own area and not just thrown down in the middle of the floor. Now, I didn't really have an idea of how I wanted this to come out and look, but this'll definitely do. After I finished the enchanting area, I made some fireworks, added them breaking onto my elytra, and finally got a good view of the base before setting out in search of anything interesting, because I still haven't used these damn things and I got them a very long time ago. Now, the ability to fly and just stop off and loot ships was a very welcome change. I don't know why I didn't do this sooner, it just makes everything so much faster. Just dropping down, looting up the island and flying away just as fast, it's so much better. Now, other than islands and the odd coral reef, we didn't really find much initially, so I began heading home when I spotted this massive ship that I just had to take on. So I stopped off at this little raft right here to gear up and headed over, taking out the skelly dolphin spawners and making my way inside, dealing with these silverfish infested skellies. That, to be fair, went down pretty easily, even if there were a whole bunch of them. After dealing with the close range boys, it was time to deal with the archers, and oh boy, these guys were tanky this time around, alright? They took 7 arrows to boof. They were pretty tanky. After spending the night taking pot shots at them and eventually deciding to go and clear them out with my sword that ended up being so much faster, however I did almost pop a totem, but Gapple just too OP. After finishing off the archers, I had to deal with the captain who, I'm not gonna lie, he was pretty quick to deal with, okay? He just went down real quick, and now it's time to reap the rewards of this behemoth of a ship that consisted of like 6 diamonds. It was okay, but for this stage of the game, it wasn't too insane. But hey, at least we have now taken on the biggest ship in the oceans, I think. think. I've not seen any bigger than this one. And so with that victory under my belt, I headed home with my booty and stored it away, and then lured some sea villagers over into my aquarium because, well, they just look cool and they're useful, and I don't know, I think they'll make good pets. Oh, also I broke down the Nether portal, and on day 96 I rebuilt it in the center of the house with the remaining Prismarine I had. Now, this isn't the best portal I've ever made, but it's way better than just sitting in the middle of the room with wood for corners, alright? It looks way better, and plus it even had a cool floor pattern, so I'm really happy with how this impromptu portal came out. It's quite basic, but also quite nice. On day 97, I realized something. I don't have any villagers, like, at all. Excluding the sea boys, and, well, they don't really do much, it seems that everybody else who's done this had their own literal village worth of them by this stage, and I'm not gonna lie, I feel kinda left out, and it's way too late to get any now. So instead, I decided to spend the rest of the day luring some of these fake imposter villagers into my aquarium. If they don't give me great trades, e.g. a mending book, at least they can give me the enjoyment of seeing them in captivity forever, being unable to escape my circular prison. Ooh, things are a little bit dark there, but I'm just sad, okay? I'm sad that I don't have any real villagers. I've got these things. Hey, but who knows, alright? Who knows? Maybe we can get some in 200 days. Maybe if you guys enjoy this video enough and we can get like 10 likes, then I think I'll think about doing 200 days. And, you know, we can have some more mods and go on bigger adventures. Sound good? I get likes to validate my insecurities. You get a video of me committing war crimes at sea against villagers. Yeah? Good trade. Anyways, back on track. After securing my completely real villagers, I checked up on the lobsters before heading to bed, and on day 98, grabbed my pirate scepter that I got a while ago and enchanted it a couple of times to get a really nice set of enchants. Then grabbed whatever TNT I had and went back to the Nether to do a little bit more Netherite searching that actually ended up going pretty well, with me finding 3 chunks from the TNT alone and a further 3 pieces from just mining around, that I then took home and started smelting down whilst repairing my armor with some diamonds, before making the ingots and upgrading them. And now I know it's not a full set of Netherite, but I'll take it. And now, finally, on day 100, I sorted through my storage because it was a real mess, and if I do decide to do 200 days, then I don't want to come back to this absolute mess of a storage, okay? After dealing with the storage, I said goodbye to the lobsters because, I mean, just look at them, look how cute they are, look at their little eyes, they're so adorable, and also bid farewell to the roof crab because he's just way too cool to leave out. But there we go, we've just survived 100 days in an ocean-only world, and in the process turned this barren wasteland of the salty sea into a thriving base with both plant and sea life. As always, thank you all so much for watching, I do greatly appreciate it, and if you did enjoy the video at any point, then please consider dropping a like and subscribing, or checking out the playlist in the top right of the screen right now, with a whole bunch of other 100 days videos that I've done. But anyways, that's it from me today, stay safe till next time, and I'll see you all in the next video. Adios, peeps. Also, I promise not to leave it 2 months without a video again, okay? I promise.